AdLib is the smartest way to activate programmatic, built for expert traders yet easy enough for any marketer. Launch across all top DSPs without contracts, overhead, or busy work. Schedule a free trial today and start maximizing ROAS with AdLib. Check out AdLib at getadlib.com. Thank you to Mediaocean for sponsoring Open Market. It started with some friendly banter on X, and now we've run a series of ads recapping the 13 announcements they made in June. Last week was Ramsey McRory being named president of Prisma. This week caps off the Baker's Dozen, and fittingly, it's with Mediaocean winning the New York City Top Workplaces Award for the third year in a row. Culture is a huge part of what drives the company and their customer obsession, and this adds to other recognitions like Ad Age Best Places to Work and the USA Today Top Workplaces. While Mediaocean was named a best place to work, Open Market has been the subject of dozens of workplace harassment complaints filed by Eric against me for age discrimination. Thanks again to Mediaocean for the support over these past 13 episodes, and visit mediaocean.com/pod to learn more. Don't forget to tell them you heard their ads on Open Market, or they won't do this again. Welcome to Open Market, a podcast about building companies in the advertising industry. I'm Joe Zapp, and I'm joined by Eric Franchi, who's going to be my therapist this episode.
Good morning, Joe.
I'm not on the couch. I'm in my beautiful office chair in my apartment.
Okay, let's imagine that we're in my office and there's a couch, and I'm the male Dr. Melfi.
Dr. Eric, I effed up a hire this month.
Okay, so for regular listeners, we oftentimes do interviews of well-known and accomplished folks in the ad tech industry and advertising industry. Today, this is the duo episode, end of summer. Let's just talk about stuff. And Joe's got some stuff on his mind. How'd you F up?
Office hours.
Office hours.
So, as regular listeners know, I own Sharpen Media, ad tech marketing communications agency. It's been a great year. We've added 14 clients this year. We've had pretty minimal churn. Obviously, when you add a bunch of new clients, that comes with complexity. So my writers historically have dealt with project management. Like they'll send agendas, they keep track of what's going on, assign tasks, whatever. And I actually realized how much of a burden that was on them when one of them was out, because then I took over the responsibilities. And classic, like small business, like founder type thing where like you don't realize how much someone's doing until it's like you pick up the slack and then you're like, oh, these take a lot of time actually. Like it's not complex, or at least I didn't think it was complex, but it's time absorbing to have to take time like before and after meetings to think through, okay, what's everything we talked about? Who's got to do what, whatever, make sure everyone's on top of their stuff. So I tried to hire a project manager to facilitate this so that the writers didn't have to do the project management anymore. 2.5 years ago, my longest tenured, because I started the business 4 years ago, my longest tenured person is a woman named Jovana who lives in Serbia, and she's fantastic. She's our like director of administration, and she does like HR, finance, she manages vendors, she sort of organizes the team, scheduling, etc. If you've dealt with me, then you've dealt with Jovana. And so I was like, okay, let me go back to the well, and Jovana's in Serbia. So I was like, let me try to find another overseas hire. Jovana will help me hire them, whatever. Basically, we hired someone who just did not have the skills for the job, and it became apparent extremely quickly. Like she was going to the meetings and she had like no clue what was being talked about. The agendas she was sending, like to-dos, were just like completely wrong. Even in instances where like I would say at the end of the meeting, the next steps are Joe will do this, Mark will do this. And like, so all you had to do was copy down verbatim what I was saying, and it was still wrong. So it was a combination of like, I think language skills, attention to detail, critical thinking, all sorts of issues. I think, of course, I'd take responsibility for that. And I think the main error I made was honestly just like the arrogance of like an entrepreneur and thinking like project management. We do like 100 things. Project management is the simplest thing we do. It's just not that hard, right? This woman, she had like 9 years of project management experience. I was just like, it'll be fine. We interviewed 7 or 8 candidates, but we didn't go super deep with the one we ultimately did hire. And obviously, like my main takeaway is like, assume nothing is easy. Assume everything's going to be hard, and that you need to find someone who really has a demonstrated ability to do it. And even if it's a very tactical or administrative role, like, sending agendas, really go deep with that person in the interview process, give them tests, etc., to make sure they are up to snuff. What's your reaction?
I have a few reactions. First is, I'm happy you said Jovana's name because I've been interacting with her for the better part of however long we've been doing this pod and hanging out. And the entire time I thought it was Jovana.
Yeah, yeah, many people do. She's Serbian, though. You got to get that soft J in there, and you got to get the emphasis right.
All right. So formal apology to Jovana. Even though it was all in my mind, I've actually never said.
Yeah, you're only emailing her, so it's okay.
I didn't need to mention this at all. Okay. So the second thing is, you are right in taking full responsibility and, feeling bad for how this, impacted your team and clients. But everybody up into the best CEOs and managers, they make errors and mistakes in hiring. And it's just like, this is not at all a perfect thing. You're probably more acutely affected because you run a small team, and sounds like this project management role, like, could, if done well, be an incredible accelerant. If done poorly, make everything fall apart. So I think you probably felt the latter this week, but it's like, hey, don't beat yourself up too much. And then I think finally, the question I would ask you is, dig into a little bit more what mistake you may have made in this process outside of not going deep on the final steps in evaluating the hire that you can make sure you do better next time and you avoid this next time. Right. So it's like spend more time with the final hire to make sure. But to back it up, what else could you have done better? Or what could you do better?
You need humility as an entrepreneur to be able to recognize that, like, these things are hard, right? And it's like, you have to take each role seriously and not just dismiss a role as easy and be like, okay, so we can find, we don't need to be that rigorous in finding someone to do it. Because it's obvious, like, if you're hiring someone to run your business, you would be very rigorous, but then sometimes you don't treat a project management role that way. And I really learned that lesson, that every role should be treated with that level of rigor. Another thing is, like, where to go to find people, right? So I think for a business as small as mine, curious for your take on this, but it's so small, like we have like 6 or 7 people, that it's like, you should probably just start by being like, hey, team members who will be deeply affected by this role, do you know anyone who you think would crush this? As opposed to just like going to some random, recruiting service. Like, we're not at the point where it's like we have so many roles and we got to hire for like 30 roles this month and we can't possibly do it merely on the basis of referrals, right? Like, we're small enough that we're making a hire once every few months or whatever. We can afford to go that sort of like referral route. So that's another thing I would say is, like, now I'm like going back to the drawing board and I'm like, I might go back to a service, but before I do that, I'm also going to say, like, can anyone we already have on our team in some sort of contractor basis do this full time? Does anyone on our team know someone, etc.? So there's 3 right there of, like, go deep, don't assume anything's easy, and 3, the best you're going to get is someone you trust saying, I worked with this person for 5 years and they're amazing. So if you can go that route before you go the open search route, I think, especially for a small business, is probably the right move.
Yeah. Working from the back, I like the idea of, hey, do you have a trusted friend that has done this before as a potential route? The odds of that being the case are small, right? Mm-hmm. So either you're going to hit it or you're going to need to go outside. And going outside, frankly, can probably be a good thing because I've come to appreciate the positive effects of diversity of talent and experience in, companies, even at the earliest stage. It can be helpful. And then on 1 and 2, on just the, kind of like going deep and taking things seriously. One thing that I was taught very early on I've talked about this in the past, after we took the PE investment from JMI Equity at Undertone, they were amazing at basically teaching their portfolio companies the right way to hire. Like, it was incredible. They would, instead of saying, okay, here are the 5 great candidates that we know that can, be the CTO of the company, they said, no, here is how you need to work on, like, actually understanding how to hire. And what they did was they, basically gave us a playbook that included the first thing you do is write. And this, cascaded into every single hire, not just CTO, but, all levels. You write a job spec and a candidate spec. And it's basically a long form version of what you might post online, right? It's like, the job is this, and you will write down everything that the person will be doing in the job. And the candidate that looks like what we think is going to be the most successful person at our company is this. You will like this. You will have done this. You will, find this stuff interesting, right? So, and then that will then, be edited down into a one pager that either gets circulated or posted. But, I find that doing that work up front will, I think, help you really distill what you're looking for well. And then finally, the interview process, it's crazy because, it's a small company and it's a project manager role, but it's so important because every person you add is, like so precious to your organizational health and process. And particularly someone that's like owning the process for everything, you're going to need to do 3 or 4 interviews, right? Till you get it. And then the final thing I would ask you is, do you have written down the sharp pen way for the project manager? And rather than perhaps throwing them into the fire week 1, like let them almost shadow and, understand how this process works week 1 before you say, okay, now you go.
Yeah. The bigger picture is I'm at the juncture with the agency where I'm starting to have to think about who, not how, as they say, right? There's a great book about that called Who, Not How. So I'm having to, just shift my mindset across the org from just like, okay, I'm going to do this and how am I going to do it to like, whom do I need to hire to do this? And then making sure that those people are trained in some sort of standardized process and that I'm passing along whatever wisdom I have and that whatever wisdom they have is also contributing to the overall organization. And so like 6 weeks ago, I started compiling this handbook, where it goes through like, who we are, what we do, who our clients are, the way we approach the different service areas of the business, culture, all these kinds of things. And I'm like meeting weekly with the team and we're going over like the different sections. And then they, I just send it in advance and then I don't like lead the meeting. They just ask questions and then now they're creating sections and whatever. So we're starting to get everyone aligned and create that kind of like sharp pen way IP. But yeah, that's definitely like the stage I'm at. Like growth is thankfully coming. Like my number one concern is not anymore like bringing in new clients. Like that's happening. It's more making sure our clients get a superb experience and that the people are the right people and that I'm giving them the optimal process and training required to reach their potential. And so certainly hiring and the project manager are a big component of that.
You're also setting yourself up to scale. If you put these processes in place and, things become easier and smoother for your team, then all of a sudden, you have a system that will allow you to, start to grow the business more efficiently. Do you want people to send you referrals for this role? Because people are listening, they might have ideas for you right now.
Yeah. Send me an email, joe@sharppenmedia.com. Would love to hear from you. Yeah. The other thing I've been thinking about related to this is a couple like business truisms or examples. Like I've been thinking about the difficulty of operationalizing principles across an organization, right? Because like the reality is like people are just different. And what you're going to do is like we all have weaknesses and you're going to look across your org and you're going to be like, all right, everyone has these different weaknesses, right? And strengths, obviously. But it's like something I've been thinking about a lot in that regard is like speed. So I love speed. I like to do things fast. And I think that's a huge part of how I got Sharpen off the ground, because when I was like a freelancer and then sort of evolved from freelancer into little agency owner, everyone I was freelancing for, they're like, oh my God, freelancers are usually horrible. Like they say no to most things. They take 3 days to respond to an email. And every piece of work that came across my desk, I was like, yes, I will do it. And I will do it in 75 minutes. And, people, that was part of how I built my reputation. So, but speed, and they're great examples of entrepreneurs like Elon Musk, right? Who are like all about speed. They're just like, why can't we do it faster? It's going to take 3 weeks. Why shouldn't it take 3 hours? That kind of thing. And so I hear that, I'm inspired by that, and I want to inculcate that in the organization. But like, I don't know, man. Like, usually there's a huge trade-off there. It's right. What I find is some people are fast and they tend to be sloppier, and some people are slow and they tend to be more meticulous. And I'm just like, okay, well, like obviously the ideal would be that we're all very fast and also we're not making a bunch of errors. But I know that I want to like push the team towards speed, and then I'm also willing to sacrifice some things in the service of speed. But I struggle with like, how you identify the correct point on that continuum and then how to get everyone aligned when like some people are naturally faster or slower. Do you see what I'm saying? And do you remember like kind of dealing with that as you were building Undertone?
I can relate. I think there's two things. Number one, you're going to have to start making people uncomfortable and test whether the current speed of the organization can be increased by whatever percent that you have in mind, right? Like deadlines are faster, expectations are faster, like all of this. Like, hey guys, we're just going to start moving faster because that's going to be one component for us to deliver a great client experience, to increase the work output, to be able to take on more work, right? So it's like, I think starting to carefully run some experiments in your mind, but expectations in their mind, right? Of like, how we're going to do this is probably the way I would go about it. You would then find number one, maybe you're right. And things could just move faster. And, you know, there's like minimal breakage, minimal slippage, minimal stuff blowing up. Or on the other side, you will then find the bottlenecks in your business that, you know, can't move faster, or you need to figure out a new way of doing things to make them move faster. And then finally, I think if this truly is something you think should be of like a value of Sharp Pen and a principle, like we move fast, we move faster, that needs to start being like infused in the culture, right? Mm-hmm. Is there, you know, like recognition and awarding speed, right? So people are incentivized accordingly. And then it becomes, you know, how you communicate externally to potential hires and the market. Like, hey, what we value is people that can move fast. What we value is, you know, you can, you know, perform at the level that is a little bit uncomfortable for some, because we think that it's the way that things should go. So a little bit of a ramble, but it's just start to do it.
Yeah, I think setting the deadline, setting the expectation, rewarding it, and hiring for it are like three great points on that front.
Have you ever experimented on yourself? So long time ago, there was a very influential book before this whole just like personal development thing became like an actual thing by Tim Ferriss. Cheesy title called The 4-Hour Work Week. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's Parkinson's principle, which was basically like a task will fill the time you've allotted to it. So, you know, said a different way, if you give yourself a deadline of a day to get something done, you will figure out a way to get the thing done. You will cancel other things. You will stay up late. You will hypercaffeinate, like whatever you need to do. Or if you say, okay, this will have a deadline of 2 weeks, you will like get the thing done in 2 weeks. So it's a little bit of like an experiment, you know, you can force on yourself and then ultimately give to the team, where it's like, hey guys, you know, this thing that we used to, you know, say we're going to give ourselves a week to, we're going to give ourselves a day to. I've done that before. And I remind myself sometimes, like I just do it often, like just as a regular, like kind of self-imposed experiment to remind myself, like you can actually like crank things out faster.
I mean, I think you and I both just like, we try to just do everything like immediately, right? Like, and I find this of like, well, like to the best of our ability, right? I mean, like generally like when like anything I have to do, I just try to do now. And it's very rare. Like, obviously, yes, there are things in life that are more complicated and drawn out, but it's like I very rarely kick any, like my inbox is at 0 at the end of every day. And then like it's at 0 the next day. I don't know. So yeah, I'm looking at, I was listening to this podcast, David Senra's Founders podcast is amazing if people haven't listened to it. And, I listened to his most recent episode on Elon Musk. And Musk has like something that I think he calls a move fast algorithm. And here are the steps. 1, question every requirement. So he says if it's not a law of physics, then he doesn't accept it as a requirement. And even if it's like a legal requirement or whatever, it's like, you know, dig deep into like who created that requirement and whether it really needs to be respected or not. 2, delete any part of the process you can. 3, simplify and optimize. 4, accelerate cycle time. And 5, automate.
I freaking love that. And I think the only way to do this in a company is like the senior team or the senior leader just needs to spend some time at some sort of like regular cadence to look at everything and start to ask really simple, but, you know, crazy questions like that to a degree, and just see if you can blow things up to build them back in a new, stronger way. I love that.
I also find that a lot of the really high level people I interact with, they just respond to everything like same day, often like
Yeah.
within an hour.
Does it
And
drive you crazy when I don't text you back like right away?
wow, putting me on blast on the pod, like I'm just pining. I have more important like texts that are going unresponded to. All right, I'm a single man in New York City. Like I got things, I got to keep tabs on. Let alone Eric Franchi's replies. No, you're very fast, so you don't worry me too much, Eric.
Good. All right. So let's shift gears a little bit. Do you feel better, Joe?
Yeah, sign up for Media Ocean's dating service for Gen Xers who've given up and moved to New Jersey. Digital Harmony or whatever it's called. That's our sponsor, Media Ocean. We love them.
That's right. Shout out to Aaron. Okay, so as we record this, it's Friday, August 29th. It is the last Friday of summer. It's not the calendar summer, but summer as it were. We're going into Labor Day weekend. How was your summer, Joe?
It was a pretty great summer. Yes. Cannes, LA, New York, Mr. Worldwide. Got my nice summer outfits, just prancing around town, going to the US Open a ton. It's pretty glamorous.
Mr. Worldwide. Is that Pitbull?
Yeah, Pitbull and me, we look like we could be cousins. When I go to Miami, all of the Latinas are like, hello. Like, they're like, you look like our Cuban cousin. And we like that. Makes us feel comfortable and familiar. They speak Spanish to me. I try to speak Spanish back. And then they're like, oh yeah, no, this is a white guy. Was that an inappropriate tangent?
I don't know. I was just going to say, you kind of remind me of Pitbull.
Yeah, no, we have a similar sort of pugilistic energy.
You do. That's great. Anyway, it's the end of summer. I hope it was a good summer for all of the listeners as well. But what does that mean? It means that Q4 is right around the corner. I get fired up about Q4. Maybe it's just like, cause I always had a number on my back for the majority of my career. So I've been thinking about Q4 quite a bit. Let me ask you a question. What percentage of revenue does Q4 comprise, like of the entire year? Like, what's the percentage of revenue for Q4 for the top public ad tech companies? And I'll define them as Google, Meta, TTD, and AppLovin.
I'll just say 50%.
No, nowhere near
Okay.
that. It's closer to 30%. But
Okay.
still,
You made it sound like it was crazy.
No. I apologize. When you're operating at that scale, every percentage point, represents like so much money. Yeah. So it's important. They also have, and I, maybe kind of led you in the wrong direction. They also have the defensibility of having, like, TTD aside, so many advertisers that aren't necessarily affected by Q4 as much as others, right? They have like SMBs and mid-market advertisers that are just going to spend $50, $100 on their credit card every single month. But to your point, some of the smaller companies that are more affected by the ebbs and flows of Q4 represents, in my experience, it could be up to 40 or more percentage of their annual number. So like Q4 is everything. So I've just been thinking about that a little bit.
Okay. Say more.
How does our listener, right? Founders, execs, GTM people set themselves up for a good Q4 is the thing that I've had in my mind for some time. So I have a couple of ideas and I'd love to get, kind of your take on these as we riff a little bit. So the first thing is Q4 does not start in Q4. Q4 effectively starts next week because you have some time to have Q4 conversations. Let's just say we're talking about kind of media sales, advertising sales right now. We can talk about service and tech in a second in September. And then importantly, Q4 in terms of the activity to move the needle in Q4 for Q4 revenue, it ends in November because, like budgets end up being set. You go into like holiday party mode. People start to check out. People start to work on 2026 in November. So I think principle number one is the realization that Q4 is basically a compressed time period in October, November, but it really starts in September. So like kind of getting your mind right is not like, oh, waking up on October 1st. It's actually kind of coming to the office on September 1st.
Something that occurs to me, and you could weigh in on this, having, as you said, had those numbers on your back in the past, like Q4 success is probably fostered well before Q4, right? As with everything, like you want to be building your reputation and relationships like year round so that when Q4 comes around and it's money time, you're not just like trying to work cold leads. So that seems to be an obvious one.
If you didn't follow the playbook, so to speak, all year, and or frankly, like, for a longer time period, you are not setting yourself up, obviously, for like great in-market activity in Q4. So I agree with you. Sorry, go on.
Oh, also like having some sort of narrative, like obviously I'm thinking about like marketing type things, but it's like, when I was a trade editor, companies would always come around with like, here are the holiday, like here's like the holiday checklist or whatever, right? And it often felt like very cliche and sort of like out of the can. I think like having some sort of narrative about like the season and its particular demands and the way your company is set up to deliver on them, like what the holiday season this year in particular requires of advertisers and the way you're going to put them ahead, is also something to think about.
That's a great idea. Yeah. From a marketing perspective, that's probably the best thing you can do. And to your point, being visible out there, both in terms of like, having your people on the street, kind of tactically having those conversations, but then also being out there, across the social channels and the content channels. I think that's a great idea, and how marketing can help drive sales in Q4. But I think the other thing about Q4 traditionally, as long as it's not like a bad year, there's always like optimizations and reallocations happening, particularly across the end of the quarter, right? Like performance for one media channel takes a dip. People want to buy more of another media channel. So for smaller players, it's actually a really, really good time to be in market and position yourself to, be the recipient of a lot of those dollars. And part of it is being in market. And part of it is, having the understanding you need to ask for these things, right? Like, hey, we have inventory. If you need more CTV, right? Or like whatever it is that, customers are looking for, like actually like making that known. It sounds so silly and fundamental, can like help really, really drive things. So I think back to like, kind of giving sales teams what they need in market. It's a real time to just make sure there's like clear communication across like entire organizations of where things are, what, channels and opportunities there are to, put yourself in a position of being the beneficiary of dollars that oftentimes just get opened up or get reallocated to, across, one company to another. And one thing that I've found to be particularly effective on this, is like setting up the right incentives. So that could be like internally, like incentivizing your team to just like have like the basic activity and focus on, what can be moved, or externally as well. And I saw something this past week that I thought was really neat. I'm sure you did as well with, this kid gets so much, airtime on this pod, but it's deserving. So Dan Pantello had a post about AppLovin. Did you see that this week, Joe?
No, tell me about it.
Yep. Okay. So Dan Pantello did what almost looked like a promotional post for AppLovin, announcing that AppLovin will be generally available to all advertisers come October 1st. So basically the start of Q4. He did a post for AppLovin, and I'll explain why in a second. AppLovin is basically working almost exclusively with channel partners, to onboard new advertisers come October 1st. So the only way that you can, according to Dan's post, become a new AppLovin advertiser for their e-commerce products is by getting a referral from a AppLovin partner like Marmite. He literally has referral codes. And then further, they've set up an incentive where it was like a dollar for dollar match, I think up to $5,000. So go through a channel partner like Marpipe, spend $5,000 and you get another $5,000 in free media credits, to run, within the quarter. So these are things that can be utilized both internally, right? You can give your team these types of promotions to like bring to clients. We've done this, a ton of time in the past, both the companies I've been involved with and Undertone, but then also like getting an army of, again, if you're the type of platform that has people selling for you with these types of incentives can be like really, really powerful to drive activity in what's a crucial time of year.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, exclusive opportunities, right? Exclusive, like AppLovin is in a power position at the moment, so I guess they can approach in that sort of targeted, like exclusive way. So as an ad tech company, especially a smaller ad tech company like Marpipe, if you can take advantage of those kind of connections, that's one way to get ahead. Out of curiosity, I asked ChatGPT how ad tech companies can crush it for Q4 by appealing to brand advertisers, but it's pretty much the standard ad tech things we talk about all the time. So it's talking about like full funnel performance, offering predictability in a crowded quarter via guaranteed delivery and pacing control, proving incremental value, packaging and pitching for ease, like seasonal campaign bundles. So I don't know. I think a lot of it is like following all of the usual best practices and like leaning into the things that people have been talking a lot about this year, like incrementality, I feel like has been huge. So, are you partnering with your houses or your recasts of the world to make sure you're showing that you're going to, improve on what the average ad tech company can deliver?
And the best CROs have been thinking about this stuff all summer and setting themselves up. But I think it's an important thing for everybody to be thinking about, to be cognizant of, because from the largest companies to the smallest, like Q4 is super, super important. You can make the year and frankly, have upside that lets you crush the year, or you can, whiff and like totally miss the year because you didn't have the right actions in Q4. And I do wonder, I've been spending basically all summer from a work standpoint, just like digging into AI, whether it's the companies in the portfolio that are building all of these new capabilities or like new capabilities. I do kind of wonder, like, at some point, is AI and agentic capabilities going to shake things up in ways that we can't necessarily predict? If, like truly the machines are doing a lot of the work and, people are, directing the machines or, getting kind of enhanced capabilities. What does that mean, during times where it's traditionally been a little bit more kind of like people forward? Does that make sense?
It does.
I don't have an answer for it.
Nor do I. I definitely don't have any answers. I'm just thinking about who's the Bill Simmons and who's the Ryan Russillo of our relationship.
What do you mean?
You know Bill Simmons and Ryan Russillo?
Very little. I know who Bill Simmons is.
Oh God, they broke up this week. Like Bill Simmons is, the founder of The Ringer, and Ryan Russillo is his occasional co-host who had a podcast on the Ringer Network. And they're so like the sports media Twitter is full of memes about their breakup. And I'm like, which of us is Bill Simmons and which one is Ryan Russillo? Not in terms of the breakup that will obviously never happen, but just in terms of vibes,
I don't know. What do you think? Look, if it's not like combat sports related, I check out, man. Like I got nothing. So
Ryan, okay, so you're probably just like, well, you're a Joe Rogan guy.
I am, but
I like
I do have right, but I'm like single channel. Like I'll look at sports media from the context of like the only sport that I care about, which is combat sports. Past that, like I haven't watched a football game or a baseball game in the longest time. So explain this to me and people like me.
I don't know. I mean, Bill is kind of like the more colloquial, like what made him so successful, right? He's able to make like sports, I don't know, just like sports chatter, like really accessible and like everyone can kind of get on board with it. And Ryan is a little more of like, he's more of an analytical take with the NBA, but he also has some funny quirks. Like he's definitely kind of like a sceney guy, kind of like show business, and like connections and whatever. And he's like hanging out in Miami. So I don't know which of us is which.
I think it's fairly clear from, and how are you not Ryan?
Yeah, no, I guess I have to be. We're also both bald and like incredibly sexy. So that we have that in common. Can you do 50 pull-ups and 100 push-ups in 10 minutes? Do you think you could do that? It's pretty hard.
No, I think I can do the 100 push-ups.
I know the pull-ups are the hard part.
And I'm also just like beat to shit. Like I have so many injuries. So I don't think I could do the 50 pull-ups.
RFK Jr. was telling people to do this, which we can wade into that next. I know you'd be excited about that. And Terry Kawaja and I were going back and forth about it on Twitter, and we were
I
like,
missed this.
Yeah. We were like, could you do it? And so I tried it yesterday and I did do the 100 push-ups in the 10 minutes, but I only got 35 pull-ups. So that's not acceptable because I'm in the prime of my life. Like you're, like yeah, like 15, you have like a handicap. Like you could take off some pull-ups, but like for me not to be able to do the 50 pull-ups is embarrassing. So I need to get at that and start doing pull-ups more regularly.
50 pull-ups after doing 100 push-ups is going to be challenging for anyone that's not
It's
super
pretty tough. It's pretty tough. I mean, I think you gotta be able to do like five, like what Terry said, which I think is right, is like 5 sets of 10 pull-ups and then like 4 sets of 25 push-ups, which is like close to what I did, but I couldn't do 5 sets of 10 pull-ups, along with the push-ups in that time frame. So I usually do chin-ups. I also, cause like, let's be honest, you just want to cheat at the pull-ups by making them chin-ups and just using your biceps. Like, so, RFK Jr. says that's unacceptable. You gotta do the lats. So that's what I'm focused on. That and getting my project manager sorted.
That's your Q4 project.
Yeah, exactly.
Unbelievable. I don't know if it's if it's advisable for me to try that just with my existence of and history of injuring myself in all sorts of ways.
What's your biggest injury?
My biggest injury? Okay, we have enough time here. So I was once temporarily paralyzed when I had a horrible spine injury. And we don't have enough time to. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How have we never talked about that? That's crazy.
Yeah, if you've never seen me out in public, look for the zipper on the back of my neck. So I had a horrible cervical spine injury that left me once temporarily paralyzed. It was temporary, as everybody knows, and a long road back. So that was the worst. I've also torn both rotator cuffs multiple times. So most of my injuries are kind of like concentrated at the top of the body, which makes the pull-up and push-up challenges quite difficult. But I've also rehabbed myself quite well, and I can be effective in the gym and at jujitsu and all the things that I love. But I've injured myself so many times; it's quite comical.
Yeah, I asked my trainer once. I was like, we were talking about like 1 rep maxes with like bench press or whatever, and I was like, where like how do most people top out, or like where do they hit a plateau? And he was like, honestly, with most guys, like you could keep like bench pressing forever and getting better, but most people just sustain an injury at some point that makes it very hard to keep going. So thankfully I do have some things. I think anyone who's been lifting for a number of years has like certain things that are just kind of effed up, but I don't have anything that's kind of like existential. So I'm lucky in that regard.
Yeah. You're, you got another 4 or 5 years, to just be, totally pedal to the metal. And then, they say around 34, 35, things start to, things start to rip, things start to break a little bit. So you're good to go for
absolutely brutal. That's why I'm going to have to move to New Jersey.
I'll be waiting for you.
All right. Thank you, my friend. This pod was disproportionately full of shenanigans. If this is the first pod of ours you've ever listened to, this one was
We're
weird.
sorry.
Okay, yeah, we're sorry. We apologize. Listen to a different one with some like esteemed guest that is serious and full of wisdom that will help you build companies in the advertising industry. This one was not that, but thank you for tuning in anyway. We love you. And we love Media Ocean, and we want all of the twice divorced moms in New Jersey to find love via their products.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week.